Technical interviews. This is probably the most intimidating of all the PM questions you could get. And even my friends who were software engineering interns were just absolutely terrified of these questions because they can be so open-ended and you don't really know what to expect, and they can be incredibly, incredibly challenging. And there's pretty much 3 different types of technical interviews you get. You could get a system design question such as design the back-end architecture of a messaging app. You could get an algorithm question such as reverse a singly linked list, or you can just have a discussion. A lot of my friends who have interviewed with Google and myself have gotten the question, talk about a technical product you've worked on. And we just talked about basically the system architecture of what we build it on, how we build it on. And that is basically the idea. And the reason is because ultimately what happens in the technical interview is they're just assessing your skill to communicate with an engineer. This interview is typically going to be with an engineering lead who just wants to make sure that you can understand basic concepts and you aren't clueless. Like if you go into a room with a bunch of engineers, you'll understand what they're talking about. And that's basically what the technical interview should assesses. The good news is that there's only really one company that's going to ask you a algorithm question, and that's Microsoft, and that's either hit or miss. I've talked to some kids who have gotten it on their on-campus interview. I've talked to some kids that have gotten 1 or 2 on their on-site, but for the most part, there isn't going to be one. I also talked to one girl at a system design question. And like I said, it's really open-ended. Even some people I've talked to at Google have gotten system design, other ones have just gotten talk about a technical product. But this is what I'm going to say. If you have a computer design science degree, expect technical questions because they are going to expect that of you. If they're hiring someone with a CS degree, they want that person to possess it. If you don't have a CS degree or you have a minor, they're going to expect less from you. I don't know anyone that didn't have a CS degree that got asked technical questions in their interviews with Google or Microsoft. But for me, I was asked to design the system architecture for a messaging app, and that for oath, and that was a standard question that they were asking their candidates. So if you have a computer science degree, expect technical questions. If you don't expect them. But for the kids that don't have a CS degree or a background in that, it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to get those jobs that require a CS degree. So my advice for preparing for the technical interview is that if you have a CS degree or a minor, that you should really be preparing and expect these type of questions. So prepare for system design questions and just be familiar with the system architecture. So be able to talk about how the internet works and web databases and the architecture of apps. If you don't have a computer science degree, it is going to be incredibly, incredibly, incredibly difficult for you to learn these concepts just for the interview and then be able to articulate them well. So I don't think it's the best use of your time to focus on that. For me, with Microsoft, I never got asked any technical questions, even though they require a computer science degree. So that's where I stand on that. But the good news is that typically for these technical interviews, it's not like you're being graded on 1 to 3 or bad, good, great. It's either yes or no. You either meet the bar or you don't. So when you're preparing, just be able to articulate yourself well. If you have a computer science major, you should be fine.